You may have thought that in 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. You may have thought that Russia was then responsible for causing tens of thousands of civilian casualties by firing missiles at cities across the country. You may have thought the war followed Russia demanding that Ukraine give up its right to ever join NATO. But maybe you were wrong. Maybe Ukraine started it. That's certainly what Donald Trump thinks. This is the president at a news conference in Florida. He grew irritated at being asked why Ukraine hadn't been invited to the talks in Saudi Arabia. Have a listen.
I think I have the power to end this war, and I think it's going very well. But today I heard, we weren't invited. Well, you've been there for 3 years. You should have ended it 3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal. I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land, everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down. But they chose not to do it that way.
Catherine Philp is the Times World Affairs editor, and she is in Ukraine. Good morning. Catherine, are you there?
Good morning, Kate.
Morning. I don't know if you heard that clip there from Donald Trump talking about Ukraine started the war. You could have avoided it. You wouldn't even have to have given up very much land. How will those comments go down in Ukraine?
I mean, they're absolutely shocking comments, and I've already seen a great deal of public anger expressed on, social media and the likes about them. I mean, they're just the latest in an extraordinary range of remarks coming out from Washington and from Trump in particular about Ukraine's involvement, its culpability for this war that it did not invite. We haven't heard an official reaction from the leadership yet from Zelensky, but in some sense he moved ahead of where this was going anyway when he made the decision not to go to Riyadh. He was meant to be going today, and actually he would have been too late to catch any of the people who were negotiating yesterday. So he cancelled that, and I think that was really a recognition of the way that this is going. Zelensky doesn't appear to be trying to solicit Trump anymore. He's really turning to Europe instead.
So in a sense, do you get the impression that Zelensky has given up on the hope that America will give Ukraine equal weight in these talks?
It looks like that to me, or at least he has given up directly lobbying it for himself. I think that, again, he's going to try and do that through European allies who actually, appear to want to listen to him and give him some room for to be heard.
I mean, we have interviewed a couple of people over the course of the week. We were speaking to somebody after 8 o'clock today who believes that we need to give Donald Trump more time. Stop being so pessimistic. Everything is going to work out fine in the end. It might feel messy at the moment. It might feel unfair, but the result will be a good one. What do you make of people who say that kind of thing?
Well, people have been saying that kind of thing for over a year, and I think that's one of the reasons that we're in the situation we are now, and that Ukraine is in the situation that we're in now, particularly in Europe. There was no real preparation for the fact that Donald Trump was going to come back into office and was very likely going to behave in this manner towards Ukraine. And, we're in this position where we're scrambling around. I mean, Moscow has said it won't accept European troops in Ukraine as part of a peacekeeping force, but there really has not been any movement from Europe over the past year to prepare for a scenario like this. So I would say to those people, how much more evidence do you want that Trump is not willing to go to bat for Ukraine?
One of the things that Russia is also saying is that it wants NATO to withdraw its offer of membership to Ukraine. Do you think that's realistic?
That's a really difficult point because NATO is a consensus organization. All of its decisions require all of its members to be in on that. So, what they've asked is for the withdrawal of the Bucharest Memorandum from 2008, which is what put Ukraine on a formal path to membership. That can't be revoked by a single member of NATO like the US. It would require the whole organization. So I think that's going to be a pretty difficult fight to happen. It's possible, but I think it's worth remembering that this was Putin's demand of Ukraine and of Zelensky at the very beginning of the conflict, and no one was prepared to capitulate then. So why should they do it now?
Just finally, Catherine, while we have you, and you are in Ukraine, you can give us a really good perspective on what the war feels like at the moment. There is a lot of talk about who's winning, about who's more on top of this. What's the reality out there?
Yeah, it's quite strange, to be honest. It's quite a strange moment in the conflict because people have been warning since middle of last year that the Russians were on the verge of a breakthrough in the east around Pokrovsk, which is a place you've probably heard a lot of talk about with the fighting recently. And that actually hasn't happened. The Russians have been slowed down more than you might expect. So while the momentum for Ukraine isn't great on the battlefield, there really hasn't been as much movement as you might have expected in the last 6 months.
Interesting. So Russia's hand potentially militarily not as strong as is maybe being made out.
No, that's right. I mean, what's actually happening is that Russia is still sort of throwing these waves, human waves, at the front line. But the battle is increasingly moving to drone warfare, with each side trying to kind of outdo each other with technological innovation. So although Russia is losing a lot more men, at this point in the war, as many men as it's ever lost in, say, a month, the nature of the conflict is changing. It's less of the kind of heavy weaponry that it was in the past. And as I say, more about these drones battling it out.
Catherine Philp, the Times World Affairs editor in Ukraine. Really appreciate your perspective on all of that this morning. Thank you.
It's actually... People are actually angry. I really feel that people are getting in touch. I mean, you can't read all of them out because they're just very abusive of Trump for reasons that I think we can perhaps understand. But here's one that gets a flavour of it. Trump is clearly psychologically and morally unfit for the role of US president. Why will nobody say this? His intellectual gaffes seem to be on par with his predecessor. He's just a bit more energetic, which is masking this. Could any other Western politician in the last 3 years, any other one, have said, you should never have started it to Ukraine, and not only retain their position, but be seen as the most important deal maker in the world after it? I mean, I can't think of a Western politician who would ever have said it. I can't think of an American president who ever would have said it.
No, I think the problem, as ever, with Donald Trump, and Adam Bolton actually was on the programme yesterday talking about this, there is always a kernel of truth in whatever he says. Now, I'm not saying there's any truth in that particular statement, but more broadly, in a lot of the things that he is saying, the complexities of this war, the demands on either side, the way it is true that Europe hasn't done enough. Catherine Philp is saying the same. Europe has known that this was going to come to a point for quite a long time. There's been very little preparation. Macron has really tried to do some. The French president not managed to get very far in terms of what people will commit to. Still failed to get to a commitment in Paris this week. Europe still seeming not to be ahead of the curve, far behind it, and allowing others to take the lead. And that is exactly what's happened in Riyadh. And I think that's the problem with this, is that there is a kernel of truth in the fact that Europe has not been there.